Welcome to this explainer. If you've got a kiddo right in that sweet spot, 3 to 10 years old, you already know the world can be a pretty overwhelming place for them sometimes. Today, we're diving into something super common but honestly really tough to handle. How to calmly support a child who is absolutely terrified of loud noises. We're going to break down some actionable, science-backed strategies to help you guide them through those fears and do it with a ton of confidence and compassion. Okay, so right off the bat, let's just validate that incredibly heavy feeling of helplessness you might get as a parent. It is so distressing to watch your child panic, right? Seeing them cry inconsolably or literally hide under the bed just because a thunderclap hit, or the vacuum turned on, or a fire alarm went off. In that moment of sheer panic, it genuinely feels like absolutely nothing you say or do can reach them. But hey, here's a vital stat to keep in your back pocket. Research actually shows that about 10% of all children develop a severe fear of storms or loud noises. So to put that into perspective, the very first takeaway here is that you are absolutely not alone. Your child's reaction, it's intense, for sure, but it is a totally well-documented developmental hurdle. And honestly, it's one we can successfully manage together. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at when noise triggers fear. Then, we'll get into the neuroscience of sensitivity, followed by how sound phobias actually develop. After that, we'll cover graduated audio exposure, and finally, wrap up with some really practical strategies for parents. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, when noise triggers fear. Now, feeling startled by a sudden loud bang is a totally universal human reflex. I mean, we all jump. But what we're talking about here goes way beyond a simple jump. Phonophobia is this intense, totally disproportionate fear of loud sounds. Think alarms, fireworks, or even just popping balloons. And then there's astrophobia, which is the specific, abnormal fear of thunder and lightning. These phobias trigger intense anxiety, real physical symptoms like a racing heart or sweating, and a profound sense of helplessness for the child. It's not just discomfort, you guys. To them, it is perceived terror. Moving right along to section 2, the neuroscience of sensitivity. So, when we compare responses, a neurotypical reaction to a loud sound is basically a momentary startle, right? And then a really quick recovery once the brain goes, oh, okay, no actual danger. But for some kids, especially those with autism spectrum disorder or sensory processing differences, their neurological wiring is just different. For them, a loud noise isn't just scary, it's physically painful. It's this overwhelming sensory overload that causes prolonged distress because their system literally cannot quickly dampen that incoming sensory data. And you know what? The neuroimaging absolutely backs this up. Whole head MEG brain scans, which are super cool, they map brain activity down to the millisecond, reveal that kids with anxiety disorders display early sensory hypervigilance. Within just 50 to 150 milliseconds of perceiving a threat, their visual and sensory cortical regions just light up intensely. Their brain is basically acting like an overly sensitive high-alert alarm system. It's reacting to perceived threats in a mere fraction of a second, way before conscious thought even enters the picture. So the really crucial point here is this two-step process that researchers have identified, hypervigilance followed immediately by avoidance. Because their brain registers that sound as an immediate, massive threat in literal milliseconds, the child's natural hardwired response is an overwhelming drive to avoid it. They desperately want to escape the situation. That's exactly why they run or hide under blankets or cover their ears. It's literally an automated survival mechanism kicking in. Let's shift gears to section 3. How sound phobias to dock. It's fascinating to notice how this fear evolves as your child's brain matures. In infancy, fear of noise is just an innate, protective, acoustic startle reflex, nothing more. But as they become toddlers, around ages 1 to 3, this evolves into predictive fear. Like they see a dark cloud and suddenly they anticipate the scary noise. By preschool, ages 4 to 6, imagination totally takes over. And this is actually the peak age for sound phobias because magical thinking dominates their world. A preschooler doesn't just hear thunder, they think the sky is breaking or the clouds are angry at me. They just don't have the logic yet to evaluate the actual danger. So to help them navigate this, we use a psychological framework called the inhibitory learning model, and this is vital to understand. The goal of treatment is absolutely not to somehow magically erase the original fear memory of that loud boom. Honestly, that's impossible. Instead, we are working to create a brand new, competing safety memory. We want the memory of being safe and perfectly okay during the noise to become way stronger and more dominant than the memory of being terrified. But how do we actually build that safety memory? Well, it's through you. John Bowlby's attachment theory demonstrates that a parent's calm, reassuring presence biologically regulates a child's nervous system. You are their secure base. When you stay calm, your child's parasympathetic nervous system physically activates. It literally lowers their heart rate and deactivates their fear arousal. Your presence is the absolute required foundation for them to be able to face their fears. All right, bringing us to Section 4, Graduated Audio Exposure. Graduated exposure is basically all about confronting the fear in small, highly manageable doses. You're going to build a fear ladder together. Step 1 might be just listening to a recording of thunder on your phone at the absolute lowest volume. Maybe while eating a favorite snack, keep it chill. Step 2 is gradually increasing that volume over several days. Step 3, you introduce visual elements, like watching a video of fireworks. And finally, Step 4 is real-world exposure, like watching a distant storm from safely inside your house. This step-by-step hierarchy beautifully scaffolds the exposure, turning what feels like a terrifying ordeal into a gamified, totally achievable challenge. To make sure this exposure is successful, we can lean on the Boys Town framework for auditory skills. They call it the 4 E's. First, ensure a good listening environment, meaning minimize background noise when you practice. Next, explore what interests your child. Maybe they absolutely love dogs, so start with the sound of a dog barking before you ever move to thunder. Then expand on their interactions by adding language. Explain what the sound actually is in really simple terms. And finally, enjoy. Seriously, make these exposure practices playful. Sit together, build a pillow fort, and make it a really positive bonding experience rather than some strict clinical drill. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Practical Strategies for Parents. It's absolutely essential to keep an eye on your own behavioral responses as a parent. So here are your do's and don'ts. Do remain calm and model safety. Do provide simple science explanations. Say something like, hey, thunder is just the sound of air getting really hot quickly. And do acknowledge their fear while building confidence. I know it's super loud, but we are completely safe inside. Conversely, the don'ts. It's so important that we don't mock the fear or tell a 4-year-old to just toughen up. Try not to display your own dramatic anxiety about the noise, because trust me, they will readily mirror you. And most importantly, avoid allowing complete indefinite avoidance. Avoiding the noise entirely only reinforces the brain's false belief that the noise is incredibly dangerous. By tailoring your approach to specific triggers, you essentially replace panic with predictable coping skills. So for thunder, create a cozy storm routine. Maybe you always pull out a special, specific board game. Teach them to count the seconds between the lightning flash and the thunder rumble. This is a great trick because it engages the logical part of their brain, overriding that emotional fear center. For unpredictable things like school fire alarms, work with teachers to allow noise-canceling headphones as a temporary bridge while they build up their tolerance. And for fireworks, start by watching from the safety of a car or a living room window, way before you ever attempt to sit in a loud, crowded park. Remember, to your child, your calm presence is always going to be their absolute loudest signal of safety. They are constantly looking to you to know how to interpret the world. You are their secure base. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. What small, brave step will you take with your child today to help them face the noise, overcome their phobia, and step back into the world with confidence? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep practicing, stay calm, and you're going to get through the storm.